I've wanted to make a small series of videos on how to do business with certain cultures, and this is my second video in the series, and I'll be doing this one on doing business with the Chinese. I'll put my credentials once again in the description as to not waste time here. These videos are based on my personal experience and knowledge. Just to be clear, this video is about how to do business with Chinese people and has no reflection on personal and family relationships. The most important thing to understand about doing business with the Chinese is that the concept of saving face, which you may have heard of, is very real and is not folklore. Saving face has to do with the foreigner, non-Chinese person not publicly embarrassing a Chinese person by being overly critical in front of others. If you need to be critical of a Chinese business associate, you can, but you need to do that more privately. Based on China's collectivist culture, a foreigner that publicly criticizes a Chinese person is regarded as publicly criticizing all of China. The Chinese have a lot of pride in themselves as a collective country, so it's something they take very seriously. I've seen this in person multiple times. The next thing I can share with you is that while Chinese people are direct with each other from a communication style, they've been sort of trained to communicate in an indirect way with Westerners and other foreigners. I can't blame them for being trained to speak indirectly with Westerners, especially Americans, because most Americans are indirect. But what happens is that this can sometimes be confusing to the Chinese. They sometimes have a hard time, and equally important, Chinese people are trained to not say no to Westerners, since saying no is considered a sign of rudeness. And as a Westerner, you'll need to ask for clarification. Here's an example. You can ask a Chinese business associate the following question. Do you think the new samples will be ready in 1 week? They will answer with, no problem. But you can't take no problem as a yes. It might be a yes, or it might be a maybe at best. So you better clarify and literally ask, does no problem mean yes? I've had to do this for years, and it's become common practice. In a bit of a more lighthearted way, since Chinese people don't want to disappoint Westerners, they'll typically shorten the estimated time it takes to get somewhere. We like to joke when we're in China, where everywhere takes only 20 minutes. When you're told it will take 20 minutes to the next factory or office visit, double it. If there's traffic, which there almost always is, triple it. And I say this part with love. I did a similar video on doing business with Germans, I'll put that in the link in the description, and said that Germans are comfortable with small talk as long as it's sincere. The Chinese have a bit more difficulty with small talk and casual talk, for example, at a business dinner. Now, they would love to talk to you, but they sometimes feel as though they may not want you to know about them. So it's on you here, and correct this. Take the initiative, ask questions about them, ask questions about their families, ask questions about where they live, where they grew up. Just don't make it as personal as we Americans do, and you'll see Chinese people open up and they will love to share. And they'll also ask questions about you and your culture. That's how you'll form friendships, and the best way, in my opinion and experience, to form friendships with your Chinese business associates. And I have many Chinese business associates that I genuinely regard as sincere friends, not just acquaintances. One last thing, which seems maybe a bit minor but is important and does directly relate to the cultural differences. As a Western man, when you work with a Chinese woman, even if, say, you've been in the factories for 2 weeks with them, when you say goodbye on your last day before going to the airport, a handshake will do. Don't try and give them a friendly Western-style hug. At first, they will get very uncomfortable and it'll be awkward. You'll need to earn that, and that usually takes several years for them to be comfortable with hugs from you. Chinese women in general are relatively reserved and are only comfortable with some type of physical contact with the man they're in a relationship with. If you're a Western woman, you can get away with a hug, but not a man. I have Chinese friends who are women who I now consider practically a sister, and I mean that sincerely. And I've known them for years. And it took a long time, several years, until I finally got to hug status with them. It can happen, but it takes a while. In areas like Shanghai, Chinese people act a bit more Western, but in most parts of China, the Chinese are a lot more reserved than us Americans. They're not accustomed to our loudness, rudeness, and casual stance on almost everything. So send me your comments and questions, and each week you'll get a chance to win a copy of one of my books. Your choice, either my book on presentation skills or business writing skills.